Hi, welcome to the System Logic Podcast by Simpliphy. I'm Jason Lee. We are here with my friend and colleague, Jared Steel. Jared is a longtime healthcare industry expert, somebody that's been in the field and that I've known for, 15, 20 years in the industry. Jared, so happy to have you on the show. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's nice to be here.
So for the audience, Jared, why don't you give everybody a little bit of a background on yourself, some highlights from your career, and a little bit how we came in contact with each other.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So my career has primarily been in medical group finance, healthcare finance, and management consulting and healthcare technology. And so I came up through business undergrad, and when I was in undergrad, I read through the case study. One of the case studies we did was the Virginia Mason production system.
Okay.
So that was like my first thing where I started to think about healthcare business and healthcare administration and optimization. So my degree was in operations management, so a lot of Six Sigma and lean processing and Toyota production systems.
Right.
And one of the case studies was Virginia Mason.
Oh, fantastic system.
Yeah.
Obviously.
We're here in Seattle.
Here in Seattle, as you said. Yeah, we're here in lovely Seattle, although a little bit of drizzle outside today, as you'd expect. But definitely an HMO model system, kind of modeled after the Kaiser approach that we have in California. But yeah, definitely a pillar of quality and delivery for the whole industry.
Yeah. So I thought that was just really interesting going through Virginia Mason's model. After undergrad, I joined a health system in Northern California as an analyst. During that time, I went to graduate school and studied health informatics at UC Davis. And
very important topic these days.
Yeah. And well, a lot of business folks will say, my education was interesting, but it didn't apply to the actual practical use of my, white collar analytical job or project management job. But I feel the opposite. I feel like the combination of, operations management and then informatics was just a really rounded, education. I think it was great.
Yeah.
As I was finishing my degree, I was thinking about management consulting and was doing research, evaluating firms, and just really was drawn to ECG management consultants. Just I liked that they were healthcare focused and the cities they were in resonated with me, and just kind of you
got to pick a good place that you want to live.
Yeah.
That's
so
a good choice.
For some reason, I kind of circled them and found a way to get my email in your inbox.
Yes.
And we interviewed, and y'all brought me on.
Yeah,
and
the rest is history, as they say. Yeah. No, and I do remember you amongst some of the other candidates that we had, and I said, look, we got to bring this guy on. He's got the background from a technology standpoint, has worked at a health system, would be a fantastic consultant, and turned out to be true. Yeah,
so then I joined, and at the firm, I really began to learn more of the finance side, actually, because I had come up through more operational and then studying informatics and trying to get, a good feel on the data side. Informatics, health informatics is really the flow of data through the health system. So it's really understanding all of the different pipes of data and how they transform and how they integrate, and that turns out to be a really helpful thing to study.
Yeah, for sure. And and part of the title of our podcast, System Logic Podcast, speaks to some of those things that you do from an administrative standpoint, from a funds flow standpoint, from a data flow standpoint. Tell us a little bit about how that led you to where you are today.
Yeah, sure. So had a nice stint in management consulting, and we, spent hundreds of hours in client meetings and a
lot of windshield time.
Driving around, and that, a lot of that plays into why we came back together for this podcast and why I called you at some point, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But at some point, ready to take a little bit of break from management consulting. It's a bit of a grind, and so I moved over into the technology space and joined a medical group, finance-based health tech firm.
Okay.
And
Well, technology is really taking hold across the industry of healthcare. There's a lot of folks trying to find solutions around how to improve the efficiency, effectiveness of not just the hospital side, the medical group side, and of course the health plan side as well. So, so that's interesting. And having your career take you to that space, has it been rewarding? Have you found like that has really scratched the itch that you maybe found during consulting and some of the early parts of your career?
yeah, I think so. I think being a subject matter expert first, and then moving into the technology side, which in healthcare has very specific use cases. Like, every single application scratches a couple very specific itches.
Yeah.
And you need to have folks that understand all of the edge cases, and they've sat in the seat of your new users of that application. And so
Right.
I think it's worked out really well to be able to move over, because a lot of the other way in health tech or in any technology services is you get kind of business generalists, or you get folks that they know project management, or they know sales and things like that, which I think that works fine. But, I think we've consistently found that being able to draw from folks who, were subject matter experts, and specifically, I've really found that folks that were in advisory have worked really well in this space, because
Right.
on the advisory side, you also know how to sell a contract and then service that contract, and so you really understand the full range of activities.
There's definitely a lot to be gained from having to pitch the value proposition of a service offering or an advisory offering, and getting somebody to bite on that,
Yeah.
So, much of our audience is early careerists, grad students in the MHA space, et cetera. What words of advice would you recommend that folks maybe go into consulting for a little bit, or what words of advice would you have for them as they're thinking about the next stages of their career?
Yeah, I think advisory is a great place to start
Yeah.
a career. We were actually talking about it earlier. Spending 4 or 5 years in advisory in professional services is just a really great way to start your career, because it teaches you how to service a client.
Yeah.
Versus if you go straight into a health system. I know that's a great upbringing as well, and
Right.
maybe you start there. But having a chapter in professional services just teaches you a lot, right? It teaches you how to service a client, and
Yeah.
there's a lot to be learned there.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. And then, as you said, you and I had a conversation about 18 months ago or so
Yeah.
now. And do you remember what we were talking about?
Yes, I do. So this would have been the fall of 2024. And I had joined at that point Simpliphy, which is where I'm currently at. And again, we're a technology suite that manages provider compensation, provider.
Sponsor of this podcast, of course.
Absolutely.
Yep.
We manage medical group finance, basically. So we help make sure our docs get paid on time and according to their contract and transparently, and all of those very, very important things. And
Right.
it's a great firm. And I joined in the fall of 2024, and as on the business development side and on the engagement side, so primarily helping to go through discovery, scoping, and onboarding of new clients.
Okay.
And during that time, just looking for opportunities to reach more people, and how as a firm can we just get more eyes on the company, and then we can help more people and
Right.
help more physicians and deploy our technology. And one thing that I kind of picked up along the way with respect to advertising and marketing, I don't claim to be a marketer or an advertiser of any sorts, and folks do it a lot better than I do. But I have found that in today's age, you need to have, and what I've kind of coined the term, content vehicles. So these are things where they can, just like reoccurring revenue, they provide almost reoccurring content, reoccurring distribution of information. Because I think it's easy to, do a study or draft a white paper or do a presentation. Those things are like the top of the list of activities to do when you want to speak to the market and
Right.
engage in the market. But that's not a vehicle. That's a one-off thing.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of building content vehicles that have reoccurring content production that's
Right.
valuable and interesting and gets folks to think about, what you do and how you do it is a very good idea. And so one content vehicle is a podcast or some sort of other interview-based model. And so, it was the fall, and I started thinking about, okay, podcast would be a great idea. There's a lot of conversations that I would like to have or have a partner be having or just be close to. Am I the right person to do it? Maybe not. I'm not. I just didn't feel like I wanted to raise my hand to be the talent there. Happy to participate, but I started thinking about, okay, who do I know that can do a nice job at a podcast?
Right.
I called you.
That's right. Well, and that was the beginning of the discussion. We'll dive more into that here in a little bit. We'll be back just after this. So we're back having a conversation here with Jared a little bit about the podcast. And I do recall that conversation that we had. And I wasn't quite ready at the time to, do a media vehicle like this or join you over where you're at. But that was a very interesting conversation that we had because it was always intriguing for me.
Yeah. What'd you think when I remember you're like, huh? And then you kind of do that thing where it just like the machine starts going and you're like, okay, let me start to put the pieces together here.
Well, I had always been very active on the speaking circuit and participated as a moderator for a lot of panels at conferences and conducted a ton of webinars over the years, of course. And it had always intrigued me having some type of media property that would allow us to share our voice, share some stories, share some wisdom from really interesting guests. And I think what intrigued me the most was how different it would be from something like a panel discussion or like a webinar, right? Because, it's a little bit didactic. It's a little bit kind of dry when you talk about some of the other things and other ways that people get content and other modalities out there, vehicles, as you said. So, so I was definitely intrigued.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about it, but then, things take time, right, to marinate. So
yeah, they do. I remember we were talking about it, and then I ended up choosing to go a completely different direction and spend some time at another company doing some product development work. But it always in the back of my mind. It was always thinking about that. And
you remember, I remember you saying you also started to just talk with friends about it, talk with your wife, and just kind of get you want to get the temperature. Like, what do people think about?
Yeah.
Me getting on a mic and running a show, and good feedback. I assume.
Well, if you ask my wife, she'll tell you I talk too much, so maybe this is a good way to get all my talking out. But no, I think I've always been a person that is inquisitive, loves to have conversations, and about a broad array of topics. And of course, healthcare and technology that we talk about here on the System Logic podcast is one that I have particular interest and expertise in. And so that was really thinking about how do you refine the type of conversations that you want to have? How do you think about who do you want to invite on to have and share their thoughts, right? You don't want to necessarily bring anybody on, and you want to make sure that they're bringing the right type of information and insight and wisdom to the audience that they can benefit from.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and that was that's one of the reasons why I thought about you, because you as a consultant, upbringing through advisory, you're a true expert in like about a couple different 2 to 3 to 4 key subjects. You've sold work and service work, whether it's medical group finances, managed care, value-based services, and then even just some other topics as well. I mean, these are things you spent years actually doing the work
Yeah.
and advising. And so you have these areas, and if you look at managed care and then compensation and medical group finances, I mean, those alone are two like huge
big pillars of our industry.
So you have at least two, but there's even a couple more that you know a lot about as a true expert. And then you also just have a great understanding of the whole system at large as well. And so I'm just thinking about having these conversations, and you can really speak and relate to folks, either as a true expert, but absolutely as someone who understands the flow, like we talked about, flow of data, the flow of services, the business considerations, the patient care considerations, and all of that.
That's right. And that was one of the things that intrigued me was how do you synthesize a lot of this knowledge and information and make it digestible for the audience, make it interesting and usable, particularly as we thought about, both you and I have had many conversations more recently about our audience. Who are we talking to? We've got folks that might be in grad school getting an MHA, or earlier in their career as they're thinking about what pathway do I want to take in the industry. Should I go on the consulting side? Should I develop some skills within a health system? Should I be on ambulatory, acute, whatnot? And there's a lot of different ways and a lot of different perspectives that I think would be very interesting. As you thought about the first season of the System Logic podcast, what types of guests and what are the types of folks that you think we ought to have on to have some good conversations?
Yeah, I think that, you want to have folks on that are actually in the seat as stakeholders in these different business units within the health system, because again, it's so niche. There's so many unique corners of how the business flows through healthcare, how the patient services flow through, and so having folks that actually are sitting there and they know all of the corners and they know all of the details that, like this morning, we were having coffee with a friend who is on the health plan side. So, that's a huge part of the house. And there's just so many important considerations when we think about trying to improve healthcare, trying to improve access, trying to manage, this total spend within the healthcare sector and be good fiscal stewards of all those dollars. It's such a big moving ship. Yeah. And it's hard to redirect in one way or another, but we really have to make sure the best ideas are winning and rising to the top. And so
I love that.
Being able to find folks that have found those good ideas, that are implementing them, that are innovating on them, I think we need to hear their stories, and I think we need to talk to them and just have some of the most important conversations in healthcare. And, I think we were all trucking along over the last decade, and good ideas were rising to the top, and some great companies, and, healthcare is trying to find its place with great care delivery and trying to make it economical. Yep. And then you bring in, AI.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And now just the last couple of years with technology advancing so quickly, and the just nuclear fission of having AI tied to all of that is just
time to reset every conversation, every business case.
It really can apply to everything, every area and niche within healthcare delivery. I'm so excited to have conversations like that. I would love to have folks on that are at technology companies so they can give us their perspective on how technology can advance some of those things. I'd love to have folks on that are at health plans and how the health plan and the reimbursement element and the perspective that they have about the cost of healthcare can be shared. And of course, the providers, the health systems, the delivery of care is going to be a very important element as we navigate these conversations. And I would love even to talk to folks that are thinking about it from a policy perspective, from a regulatory perspective, because much of what we have in the United States from a healthcare perspective is due to the policies and the laws that are in place, whether it's the original Social Security Act that created Medicare, Medicaid, or the Affordable Care Act in 2010 that created so much of what we have from a Medicare Advantage and value-based care perspective. And then each what's so interesting is each individual state in the country has different rules around corporate practice of medicine or the certificate of need process
Yes.
or other health insurance rules that are applied just to that state. You go across the border and it could be very different.
Yeah.
And so the challenges that our industry faces and the leaders that are in our industry, they have to be prepared to react and be flexible in all of those different types of scenarios. And boy, if you're a CEO or you're a leader at a system that's regional and you cross over to 2 or 3 or 4 states, my goodness, you're dealing with so many different things that you have to manage. And some of the solutions that you come up with, policy or technology wise, might only be applicable in one of those 4 states.
Yep.
You know, so just super interesting things to talk about, and I'm excited to have lots of conversations with folks. I don't know. What other ideas any other ideas that you have for the podcast that we should think about, brainstorm on?
Yeah, I think. Well, I know it's not extremely exciting, but I do want you to try to solve this managed care thing and value-based care.
Yes.
So that's my that's me commissioning you to have those conversations. And we were talking about this morning again with our health plan friend. It's like I have a hard time believing that we can do both fee for service and value-based care. And again, we're about 12, 13, 14 years later, and we're still kind of trying to run these parallel tracks. And so you'll have lots of fun conversations with folks about AI and health tech and robotics and all of those wonderful things.
Right.
But I got to commission you to go figure out this VBC thing and see if it's actually going to, see if we can find somebody that can, help us feel confident that it'll happen one way or the other, and we'll kind of land the plane, because it still feels like we're kind of in the washing machine.
Yeah. So last thing I want to touch on is this is preparation for our very first inaugural season here at System Logic Podcast. We are excited to be launching very soon in this spring. And I appreciate you just helping me think through how we approach the audience, how we approach conversations.
I wanted to ask you real quick.
Yeah.
So we see the idea was seeded to, build this podcast, and then we broke for maybe 9 months. We were doing our own thing, and then came back together, and it was time to get serious about it. And you were feeling like, I'm going to do this. Yeah. Just tell me, or just talk a little bit about, learning how to do this. And, another reason why I felt like you were somebody that could do this well is what we're looking at here, right? You have it all set up right. Well, it's easy. A lot of people get excited about things, but then they can fall by the wayside, or, you just kind of are messing around with something. But I knew that, or I felt like, you're somebody that would do things right. And
well, let me tell you, it wasn't easy. Certainly there's a lot of things learning about content production that you wouldn't normally think about. Certainly there are lots of kids out there that are producing TikTok videos and that sort of thing, which is an element of content production and media production. But there is certainly all of the technical pieces that you got to think about. What do I have the right equipment? Do I have the right people that are supporting the process of producing and developing a podcast like this? What are all of the properties and domains that need to exist? Whether it's social media domains, whether it's web domains, whether it's other intellectual property that needs to exist, and going through that process to educate myself on those pieces certainly was an education, supported of course by the technology that we have these days. And then I think thinking through the theme, the brand, the types of conversations that you want to have is a very circuitous route. I actually probably pinged through 2 or 3 different themes, if you will, of a podcast that we wanted to have. We were thinking a little bit more, do we want to have more of an operational discussion? Do we want to have a little bit more of a financial discussion? And I think where I certainly landed after many hours of navel gazing and pontification was, I think the element of intersection between technology and healthcare is a place where a lot of people are finding innovation and where a lot of people are finding solutions that we want to highlight. And so that process, I think, boy, it was very exciting, very interesting for me as an inquisitive person. And I think you correctly identified that I would spend time thinking through, how do you produce something like this? How do you make it interesting? How do you find the right voice and for the right audience? And bringing stories that we were hoping to bring in season 1 to the leaders in healthcare, whether those are junior leaders or senior leaders that are just trying to find some wisdom, find some knowledge from other corners of the industry, is something that I've been very excited about, and something that I put a lot of energy into producing and creating. And so, yes, it was definitely a labor of love over the last several months to get all of the right pieces, the right people, the right equipment, technology, et cetera, all together.
Continuously learning is so important though as well, right? So like, just as an adult, you get out of school and you have to sort of force yourself to be uncomfortable and learn new things and grow. And
100%. Yeah. I mean, that's something that I would actually, for the listeners out there that are earlier in their career, just thinking, boy, how do I get some of the skills? Well, sometimes it's just diving into it, right? And having given what I learned going through the process the last several months of producing and creating this entity was, having good conversations and the skill of moderating a panel or doing a webinar or doing even a keynote speech is an element of what we're doing here from a podcast standpoint, but that's not the only thing. And so what you're talking about is educating yourself on all the different sub elements of producing a media entity like this. Does take a little bit of grit, a little bit of just poking around and asking good questions and talking to people. I've talked to, half a dozen people that have had podcast or produced podcast, as well as using some AI technologies to dig into information that has really, really accelerated that and frankly been a lot of fun.
We're excited for it, and it's just going to be a great place to come and to listen to some really powerful conversations, and we're excited for it.
Yeah, and I'm excited to have you on as a guest host here and there as well as we talk to the right people. Special contributor. That's right. That's right. All right, well, that's one of our very special episodes of the System Logic podcast. I want to thank my guest, Jared Steel, friend and colleague, for coming on. It's been a fun few minutes thinking about the journey that we've been on as we develop and create this podcast, and hopefully bring really interesting conversations and content to you. And if you are listening to this and want to hear more content like this and more conversations like what we're having here and what we're going to be having in season 1, please like and subscribe to the System Logic podcast. Very excited to have you on this journey, and we'll see you next time.